So without further ado, Robert Singleton, Civinomics, joining me in studio, has what I call an attention-getting article he's written.
All right.
And actually, Robert, I've followed you off and on now over the last, however, I guess 6 months now, probably.
We've been live for about 5.
5 months? Okay, maybe that's what it was. But you have an article. Now, before we get to the title of it for a second, there are 7 words that you cannot say on radio. The FCC still has it from 1972, George Carlin skit. And here are those 7 words. No, we're not going to say that on this show. So there you have it. Those 7 words still will not be said. And but the title of your article, Robert, BS would be the
BS
acronym?
and bathrobes, yeah.
BS and bathrobes, the state of our civic discourse.
Or lack thereof.
Or lack thereof. Well, so hang on a second now. Well, why do you care about our civic discourse, first of all?
Well, I mean, I'm a concerned community member. I mean, I think it's really important that we have a legitimate process for solving our problems that affect us all, you know, whether it's the shutdown in Congress or whether it's, you know, fixing our streets or getting access to water. I think we need to have a place for real discussion about this kind of stuff and not what we do have.
So how does Civinomics play into that?
Well, Civinomics is an online platform to provide that space for people. We think that by, you know, leveraging the power of social media, we can get more people involved with better information to have more civil discourse, which can take place online. So, you know, rather than having to go to a city council meeting at some obscure time at 3 p.m. on a Tuesday, you can actually log on the same way you would to check your photos of your friends and conveniently access a place for dialogue about local issues.
Is there anything convenient about a city council meeting?
You know, I mean, it's really close to my office.
So that's all right. So you can walk there.
I can walk there, but most people don't have that luxury, and most people also who have jobs or have kids, you know, there's just almost no way you can attend a meeting unless you plan for it months in advance. And especially when you have, I mean, most people don't know what's being, they release an agenda obviously out before, but most people aren't trained to go look for it or figure out what's going on. You may catch something in the paper the day before, you know, but you know, it's really hard to engage civically these days, especially about local issues.
Right, and most people are, as you pointed out, busy with their jobs, busy with their kids, busy with their
that thing called life.
Yeah,
you know.
So it's like, well, I elected you, go do your job. Why do I have to care about that? But yet we find that when we don't pay attention to what the politicians are doing, then they do whatever it is they feel fit to do. And then when election time comes around, they say whatever needs to be said for their reelection. And if we're not paying attention, they get to do whatever it is they want to do. But if we are paying attention, then we can engage and participate in the process.
And, you know, I really think there's a lot of value for having more people involved in the process. I mean, we each have different perspectives that we can contribute. You know, if you drive along the same road every single day, you probably know a lot more about that road than someone who might be sitting behind an office and analyzing, you know, budget and, you know, or seeing what the priorities are. And it's not their fault. It's just they can't be everywhere at the same time. You know, and in terms of politicians saying what they want to get elected, you know, yeah, I think some politicians just are disingenuous, especially as you get bigger and bigger, you know, the state and national. On a local level, I actually think most of our politicians, despite what many people like to think and despite what many people like to, you know, to scapegoat them as, are actually pretty genuine, caring individuals who do, yeah. And, you know, especially if you're on a local level. I mean, most of them have been in Santa Cruz for a long time. They have their perspectives. But again, they can't be everywhere at once. They can't see things from every single side. And so I think everyone stands to benefit by more people getting involved.
So let's talk about what prompted you to write BS and bathrobes, the state of our civic discourse. I mean, so you went to a city council meeting and did it just enlighten you? Did you feel so good about how people are getting involved, or was this just a great example of maybe why everybody shouldn't get involved?
Well, I think everyone should get involved.
Okay.
I'm at that point right away. I was happy that so many people attended, but it was just the manner in which they presented themselves. And actually, I think that they would have, I mean, I kind of knew that the vote had already been kind of decided beforehand. I could
Wait. What was the topic at hand?
The topic was an ordinance regulating, well, 2 ordinances really. One ordinance regulating the number of square feet that street performers can have on Pacific Avenue and whether or not they could have flat surfaces to sell their like crafts and their little wares and things.
That was with an F, not a P, right? That you said crafts?
Crafts.
Okay,
yes.
got it. That was an F. All right, just wanted to make sure.
Yeah. And then also an ordinance that would limit smoking, because it's already banned on Pacific Avenue. Or,
right.
You can't smoke on Pacific Avenue, but it would also ban it in the side streets. So those two ordinances alone probably brought around 40 speakers to very, very egregiously disagree with the council in a way. I
see. So I want to go to one point, though. You say BS in bathrobes. There is only one person I have observed in these types of public meetings that wears a bathrobe.
Yes.
Is that person who you were thinking of when you put the word bathrobe in the title?
That's exactly what I was thinking of.
Okay, so what did Robert Norris have to say at this city council meeting?
Well, I mean, honestly, what's unfortunate is I think Robert's pretty eloquent and actually makes decent points sometimes. It's just his presentation is just, it's like thumbing the nose at the process. And, I think he was upset because I think he and many other people will think that these two ordinances disproportionately affect homeless individuals in the downtown area. A big point was made that most homeless people, or that a lot more homeless people smoke than the general population. So the smoking ordinance was inherent.
How do they buy those cigarettes, by the way?
You're telling me?
Great. Okay, good. So that's a question that we have sitting out there. So if you're homeless and you can't afford, now there are those that are homeless by choice. Mm-hmm. That does exist. There are those that are homeless. I mean, I've talked about this many times in there. It's not a monolithic group. There's no such thing as the homeless. That's like saying all white dudes. Sorry, there's a great variation within that, and there are different groups with different needs. So some people are arguing that Robert was suspecting this. He was inferring that it was targeting the homeless population. Did the city council ever say something that said, yeah, this is the homeless people that we're really concerned about?
I don't think they would directly say that. I think, they use things like, having blankets on the ground constitutes a tripping hazard.
Isn't it?
I mean, to some extent, yeah. I mean, but...
Haven't you ever had that day walking down in Santa Cruz where you're like, I'm just trying to walk to that shop 4 doors down, and somehow I can't do it, especially when on a crowded tourist weekend?
Yeah, but I mean, how much is that? Is the blanket on the ground? Am I really going to trip on the blanket on the ground? Probably not. And does it warrant a whole separate ordinance to regulate the square footage of a blanket being on the ground? Or, the amount of, level has to be
What about the
above.
legal liability to the city if I trip on that said blanket and break my hip, for example? Let's say I'm 82 years old and I'm shuffling along in the crowd and now I trip on the blanket. Who has the legal liability for when I break my hip?
Yeah, I don't know the law.
That's likely the city. And so the city has to be concerned about that.
Perhaps. If you could find me an 80-year-old person who's tripped and broken their hip on Pacific Avenue by tripping on a blanket.
Well, do you only do things reactively when you're a legislator, or do you
I just think that's
things
a pretty obscure case to bring up there.
I'm just giving the example. It is a hypothetical.
And, and honestly, my personal feelings in that hypothetical, that's probably negligence in the person walking if you're not seeing where you're walking and you trip over a blanket.
But I'm vision impaired. Is that negligent, or I shouldn't be allowed to walk on our sidewalks if I have a vision impairment?
Well, I mean, even the vision impairment, people have a stick that they use to tap in front.
Oh, so I see how this works. All right, I see where we're going. No, I'm kidding. But all right. So Robert Norris is arguing strongly for his side of this issue, and the majority of these 40 people were arguing, typically, as you pointed out, against the city council.
Very much.
But why does this turn into what transpired that made you say, all right, BS in bathrobes?
Well, really, I mean, it was just the fact that so many people were talking out of turn, literally yelling across the chambers at each other. Again, people coughing BS into their hands when someone made a point they didn't agree with. That's something we do in like middle school,
or elementary school, or whatever, right?
And there's just like, you're not helping your case any, and I actually honestly think that the mayor Hillary Bryant would have been a lot more sympathetic to them had they not made her day so bad by dealing with the fact that people were just yelling at each other and calling each other names, and it's just. There's no place for that. You don't need to do that to make your point. In fact, it detracts from your point.
Well, I'm speaking with Robert Singleton. Now, wait, what's your title at Civinomics?
So I'm a co-founder, and so I'm a co-founder and chief marketing officer.
Chief marketing officer, co-founder of Civinomics. We're talking about his article, BS. I can't say the full title. FCC would, although they're furloughed right now. I guess we could say it, couldn't we? Isn't that what I heard that Rush Limbaugh did something like that this morning?
First.
And no thanks. As the host, I will not be the one to get in trouble for that. No, but the article is BS in Bathrobes, the State of Our Civic Discourse. You can find it on the Civinomics blog, which is Civinomics.wordpress.com. And I saw it on Patch as well. So it was at santacruz.patch.com. There you go, Brad. Now mention me next time you're in your big national article, Brad. You know, I've been to a lot of these Board of Supervisor meetings now, and I don't live in the city of Santa Cruz, so I don't go to their city council meetings. But I've seen it at the board where there are a handful of people that are rather disrespectful. But isn't that our time to speak to the public officials? Shouldn't we be whomever it is that we want to be when we talk to a public official?
You know, you can use the time however you like, but if you're actually there to change something, if you're actually unhappy about something, you're not doing yourself any favors. And that's the whole point I'm making. If you want to go and get naked and ruin and disrupt a public meeting...
That would ruin my public meeting.
That would probably ruin a public meeting, especially if Robert Norris took off the bathrobe, you know.
I'm going to leave that alone, and I'll just agree with you.
But if you really care about the issue you're talking about, then why would you do yourself the disservice of you know...
So you're saying, though, that you should actually have a method when you're going to go in and present an idea. Hey, maybe have a plan, have it in a way that would be addressing the audience. In this case, it's the city council. So how do you address a city council that might be respectful and get their attention and actually get them to listen to what you have to say instead of just being obnoxious, loud, blowhard, and rude?
You know, actually, one example that I like to turn to is actually his name is Brent Adams, and he's currently pushing for that sanction.
You're going to hold that thought for a second. I'm sorry. We're going to talk about Brent.
Okay.
We're going to get to him, but we got to take a break. This is KSCO Presents. I'm joined in studio by Robert Singleton, co-founder and chief marketing officer of Civinomics. Well, you're tuned into KSCO. Studio number is 831-479-1080. Email me, eb@ksco.com. We're going to be back, and we're going to talk about Mr. Brent Adams.